Okay, so good night, everyone. And surprisingly, we have more people here than I thought, at least at the start. So it's good. I like it.
You're doing a lot better than me at enterprise, so
God.
someone's popular.
It's the marketing team.
That is you.
Thanks.
Marketing team is biased as all out.
So today's topic is called Rediscovering the Real You, and inspiration is taken from second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, also called Samkhya Yoga. And before we get into that, I had asked a question earlier on Instagram. Who are you behind the roles that you play? And I remember Rishabh saying he's just an average guy. So I like that. So that's kind of what we're going to be diving deeper into today, just kind of understanding what is Sankhya Yoga. Basically, it is the analysis of the spirit and the material body. So we'll just kind of be, diving deeper into that. And the thing is, in today's day and age, we all get so caught up in so many different identities, right? We have our student identity, career identity, even Instagram identity. We have Sunday identity. We also have Monday identity. Sometimes you also have a little zombie Saturday identity as well. So, but what about our spiritual identity? Where does that come in? So that's kind of what Krishna is trying to explain here, the importance of that. And it's kind of the dilemma that Arjuna is kind of going through here. So today we'll be diving deeper into what does our spiritual identity look like and how we can kind of integrate that and live with an awareness of both our spiritual identity and material identity. So in success, there are two kinds. We have material success and then there's spiritual success. But in order to achieve that success, we have our dharma. We have our swadharma or material dharma. That is like the roles that we have throughout our lives, such as being a student, a husband, a wife, all the different responsibilities. But then below that, we have our spiritual dharma or our sanatana dharma, which is something we'll explore a bit later on. But in order to know what our dharma is, we need to know what our identity is. So we have a material identity and there's a spiritual identity. Makes sense, right? But the thing is, 99% of people are stuck at the top, material. And they think that they're living, but actually, they're just existing. In order to live, we have to understand the spiritual side of things and how we can kind of put both of them together. And this is kind of the structure in a nutshell of the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is kind of in this dilemma about his identity, and in the earlier chapters, Krishna is kind of explaining that, then going into his dharma, and at the end achieving success. So we'll kind of be focusing first on our identity. So here we can see Arjuna is in a state of despair. He's confused. He's in agony or overwhelmed with grief, and he's kind of like in the stage of refusing to fight, because he gets so caught up in this perception or in his relationships, with his friends, his teachers, his family, or his social role, or whatever it may be, that he loses sight of his true role or his true purpose. And you see Krishna's just, chilling there, smiling. He's like, why are you taking so much stress? So Krishna is reminding Arjuna that his identity is not just limited to his material role or his, his body. And this kind of realization is the first step in how we can go about balancing that material and spiritual identity throughout our lives. So the first half of Bhagavad Gita, the first and the last instructions by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita are super important because it essentially describes the overlying condition of all human beings, which is, we'll kind of get into that, but if someone could, volunteer to read the translations, that would be nice. Okay. Yeah, just the translation. So 2.11 and 18.66. You want to go ahead? Read one? Okay.
I'll read the second one.
Okay, so Sean, you can read it first. It's my favorite too.
While speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead.
Sarva dharman parityagya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayisyami masucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear.
And if you see what do these two verses have in common, I've kind of highlighted that. This word called socha. And what does it mean? Basically, it means anxiety, and that also means fear or lamentation. And basically, at any point in time, our underlying emotions are all kind of fueled, in most cases, by one of these three emotions. And this is what Arjun is also experiencing, and it's pretty much what we experience, especially as students. It's very common. We're all going through the student life, taking, that big leap, coming to the US, studying, getting a job, having exams, all these things. So at any point in time, we're always feeling some kind of anxiety, fear, lamentation. Or in other words, we're always disturbed. Pretty self-explanatory. I was thinking I might put the sign on my car, actually. If I get a car, you just put that sticker there. Or we see the world is actually really beautiful, really sunny, but because of all these, emotions that we're going through, it's easy to get clouded and disturbed by all of these things. So, and lose sight of the bigger picture. So just wanted to share that. And Arjuna is also going through the same thing. He's anxious and everything. And this is what Krishna tells Arjuna to help alleviate that anxiety, which is kind of the following verses after that first instruction. So, Mani, do you want to go ahead and read? Or if anyone else would like to read.
Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these things, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. As the embodied soul continuously passes this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
Krishna is simply telling Arjuna that you're not this body, you're the soul. There was never a time where you didn't exist, nor will there be a time where you cease to exist. Basically saying that, you're not meant for this material world. There's something bigger going on here. Just trying to make him realize that concept. And it's a very fundamental concept in the Bhagavad Gita, but it plays such an important role in our, understanding of perception of life. And that's kind of what Krishna is telling Arjuna, that, we're not the body, we're the soul. And let's kind of dive a bit deeper into what exactly does that mean. Because you can tell someone you're not the body, you're the soul. They're like, okay, cool, move on with life. But what does that actually look like? So we all share the same qualities as Krishna, qualitatively speaking, that our soul is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat meaning eternal, Chit meaning full of knowledge or to live, and Ananda means full of happiness. I'm sure we're all seeking these qualities compared to fear, anxiety, or lamentation, right? But are we actually experiencing most of these things? Not really. How does every fairy tale end? And so they all live happily ever after. It's a very common statement, and we all take it for granted. And we see this in all the fairy tale movies. How many of us are actually living happily ever after? I'm not. But this is actually a very philosophically strong point, which I really like, and it has a very high spiritual meaning to it. And it got me thinking that we're aspiring for this so much, and where's that aspiration coming from? From these three qualities: lived, Chit, to live, happily, Ananda, ever after, Sat. Doesn't it make sense? It's right there. Literally, the solution is right there. So, just wanted to kind of bring that up. Now, just a small activity. What are some ways in which we relax, or how do we kind of feel this, happy feeling? Just kind of throwing it out there. Let's kind of write a few ideas down. Anything that you do as a student, working professional, anything. What do you do to relax? Clean. Okay.
Music.
Kirtan.
No, let's not mention Kirtan.
Music.
Sleep. Okay. Music. Who likes to travel? I like to go on holidays. Yeah. Get those national parks out there. Holiday. Right? What else? Meeting friends. All right.
Playing video games.
Playing video games. I like that one. Cool.
Eating friends' food.
Started with eating friends and I was
Cool.
Cooking. Baking.
All right. We'll kind of keep that with food. How many of these are eternal? Probably not.
Sleep can be.
I'm really missing. Yeah, I had a friend in my first semester, and he would never sleep. I'm like, why don't you sleep? He's like, I have all the time to sleep once I'm dead. I'm like, okay. I'm definitely missing the first one. I want to go on a holiday, but we have all these different ways of relaxing, right? Going on a holiday, intoxication, sleep, watching a movie, playing video games, cooking, all of these things. But you go on a holiday, you have to come back. You get intoxicated. The next day, you get a hangover. You're back to normal. Life goes on. It's just I won't use that word yet. Sleep. You wake up after some time. Hopefully, Rishab. Right? You watch a movie. Unfortunately, all movies come to an end, for that matter. What do all of these things have in common? Limited time, yeah. Or in other words, they're all a form of escapism, if you've seen that. And it's interesting to see the natural tendency of humans is to kind of find that space beyond this reality that we're living in, where we can kind of escape and find that relaxation, find that happiness. And we're constantly looking for that through all of these different things, but at some point we have to kind of come back to living in that reality and kind of dealing with all these problems. So just kind of wanted to drive that point earlier of, everything here is kind of temporary, but then there's this other part, which we'll get into now. Basically, yeah, we're not really made for this world because we have that natural tendency to look for something more. So we're trying to look for it, but we just don't know where to find it. So there are two sides of success. We've got our swadharma, which is our role in this world, not our identity. And then we've got our sanatana dharma, which is our eternal identity. Basically, at each stage in life, we put roles in ourselves based on our consciousness or based on what stage we are in our lives. So for example, at the age of 5, your role would be to enjoy or play games or, kind of whatever it may be. At the age of 15, your role is completely different. At the age of 25, you're at that career stage trying to, figure out life, settle down, all that kind of stuff, right? So we're just kind of going through that phase of, changing different roles versus a permanent identification. Simply put it, we're playing different roles at different times. That's kind of what, we're doing on the left side here. But we also have to keep in mind or remind ourselves that there's this spiritual identity, which is kind of beyond this world, which we shouldn't neglect because it's existing, it's there. So what does this mean? You wake up in the morning, no socha, no fear, no anxiety, no lamentation, because it's all temporary, right? Not really. It's easier said than done. I mean, even I'm nowhere near that realization, right? I'm still, recently graduated from IIT, so it's kind of in the same situation as everyone, and we're all kind of going through that same thing, right? So it's hard. It's easier said than done. But just kind of being mindful or being aware that this reality exists, or that we're kind of going through these different roles in our lives, at least just having that awareness makes things a little bit easier, day to day. So how does this spiritual identity look like? Like, what does it actually look like? Well, it brings me to a little activity I wanted to kind of bring up. We all know about this, spiritualism, spiritual life, but what makes it hard for us to actually take this up? Like, why aren't we all doing it? Why aren't we all spiritual? Like, why don't we all have that kind of, active spiritual identity? What's stopping us from doing that? So I just want to kind of hear your thoughts.
It requires consistency.
Okay, consistency or dedication. Anything else?
Sense gratification.
What we want to enjoy?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Distractions. But think about it this way. You're a student right now. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we putting so many hours of our day into this? What's kind of, why are we just focused on this one thing, being a student or finding a job or whatever it is?
Faith.
Mhm.
Like, lack of faith. So I have more faith in other things to get me where I want to be versus this.
Yeah, definitely.
A lack of time.
No time? Okay. How about this one? If I go around wearing a dhoti and a kurta or wearing orange, saffron clothes, would people think of me differently? Yeah, right? Sometimes we fear that kind of like perception of people treat us differently or whatever it might be. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. Public opinion. So the interesting is that Arjuna gives a solution to this. So he tells Krishna, why don't I leave all of this? Just, quit being a warrior, quit this war, go to the forest. Do you think we have any of these problems if you go to the forest? No, right? That's true. But if you're just kind of, looking at these things, we'll have all the time in the world. We don't have to focus on a career. We won't have responsibilities, all that sort of stuff. No one's there to judge us. So that's kind of, the solution that Arjuna gave. And seems like a solid solution. But then Krishna tells them it's not really who you are. And someone might think, maybe it's okay for me to go to the forest if I just, give up all these duties and go there. Maybe it is a solution. But it's not our natural tendency. Like, our mind will kind of still be elsewhere. We'll all still be thinking about, which team won the NFL, or, what is my family doing, or whatever it is, politics or career, or there'll always be things on our mind. So we're kind of past that stage of, going there. It's just not applicable in today's world. So Krishna tells Arjuna that it's okay, you do your duty as a warrior because you're a Kshatriya, that's your role, and naturally you will desire, you will have that tendency to do things that align with that role. For example, you see some people, they're born and they're like naturally talented as someone, like a musician or whatever it may be, and throughout their entire lives, they're kind of doing things that align with that role or with that identity. So it's just our natural tendency. If you take, a a Kshatriya out of that situation, they feel like a part of them is missing. The other side of it, and the simple solution is just kind of, put Krishna in the center of that. But what does it actually mean? Especially how is it, applicable for us students? Simple, really. All he's saying is whatever you're doing, like do what you have to do. You're a student, study, get good grades, get a job, earn money, buy a house, build a family, all that sort of stuff. Go for it. But he's simply saying whatever acquisitions we get or whatever talent we acquire in that process, just use it to some extent in some way for Krishna. For example, if you're a great cook, you cook for Krishna. You make something at home, just kind of offer it, kind of presenting it as, hey, all of this is coming from you, and I want to kind of give back to you as sort of acknowledgement. Great. If you're a naturally great speaker, speak about Krishna. Whatever talent, whatever acquisition we have, been making lots of money. There's so many ways we can kind of give back. Because some people say, how does making money align with, spirituality? And the simple solution is when not necessarily the active act of making money, but it's like, okay, once you have that, you can use that in so many different ways to kind of, foster Krishna consciousness, or really, work on your kind of spiritual identity, just knowing that this comes from, higher being kind of thing, a higher consciousness. And I remember last year, Rasu Mataji, she was giving a lecture on kind of how do we get started, and she was giving her own example of how they're able to commit, 2.5 hours a day to do their chanting or reading or whatever it may be. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a student here. I'm not even able to give, 10 minutes for this. But the thing is, what really stuck with me is that once you start and you invest time in this process, you realize that it makes time to do other things. And that's the cool part. So she was saying that even though, they're investing 2.5 hours on this, you see that you have more time to do other things. And I thought, okay, let's give it a try. So I tried this cool experiment for 1 week. I did, this chanting just for 10 minutes, just one round, 10 minutes. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, I tried not doing it for about a week or two. And I realized that I'm getting a bit more agitated, or my mind is kind of restless, it's going places, all that sort of stuff. I started, maybe I had that before and I didn't realize it, but once I started this process and kind of, went back to not doing it, I felt like a small change. So ever since then, we all, as students, we have that kind of, at least we all would have some kind of spiritual practice in the morning or before studying or maybe before sleeping. Maybe you have a picture and, we just kind of pay obeisances or whatever it may be. And what I started doing was in that 5 minute of prayer, I just added 10 more minutes of this. It's kind of like, building additional habits onto existing good habits. You kind of have this consistent thing going on. So I just added 10 more minutes onto this. And initially I kind of struggled with it being very inconsistent, falling off, but then kind of kept pushing. And I've reached a certain point where if I don't do it, I feel like something's missing, and that's the same thing where you ask a couple of people who have been practicing, maybe you ask Rishabh, I think he's also done this experiment. I'd be able to tell you something. So I'd like to encourage every person here to try that experiment. Just spend 10, 15 minutes a day, even 5 minutes, whatever really you can give. Try doing some kind of spiritual, activity that would help. Because what you see happening is you become more efficient in your material life. So this is where having that balance or having that integration of both identity comes in. Just as how we feed our material body with food, the spiritual practice is the food for our, spiritual body. And what we see is that fuels our material body throughout, so that way we're not constantly living in fear, anxiety, or lamentation, even though we're going through the same thing, but our consciousness is a little bit more elevated. It's kind of a difficult concept to really wrap your head around or to explain. It's just something you have to at least experience once and kind of, see how it is. Because then you're like, oh, I remember that I was very agitated, or, I'm overthinking about certain things. But then when I'm doing this, or when I'm listening about, a certain pastime, or I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita, or whatever it is, because we're seeing here that whatever Arjuna is going through, at least we're to some extent able to relate to that. and whatever Krishna is telling Arjuna, we're kind of able to see it making sense. So the cool part is whenever you're feeling these kinds of emotions of fear, anxiety, just open a random page, start reading, like, oh, it makes sense. So I have a couple of beads here that I would encourage everyone to take in case you don't have one. And if time permits, maybe we can do one round together to kind of see how that feels. I think we're missing that this semester. So, but before that, if anyone has questions, we kind of, tackle that. I just wanted kind of, us to think about this and how we can try to balance both that material space, not really sacrifice on any of those things, but just have that other side of it present, which helps make things easier. So yeah, any questions or comments or anything you want to add on or correct me? Money, can you help me?
I have a question.
Hmm?
Sleep is a very real thing. Like if you don't sleep, you'll be exhausted.
Yeah.
How do you balance it with the, like you said, it's a form of escapism, but if you don't sleep, you will mess up in everything else.
Oh, I'm not saying it's wrong, because it's definitely required, but it's just to kind of make us aware that obviously we sleep because we have to. It's a necessity. But then there's also the other side of it. Some people, they're feeling very stressed out or anxious. In that case, they tend to sleep more. They're like, I'll sleep it off. And it'll help you feel better. Similarly, you watch a movie, you go on vacation, it'll help you feel better. But after a couple of days, that problem is still there, and your emotions, you'll feel better, but after a couple of days, chances are you might end up feeling the way you did a couple of days ago. And you're looking for another solution. Now you're like, okay, I'm still feeling, really bad. I'm not able to deal with the situation. And you try another mechanism and you kind of keep going in that cycle. It's not a bad thing. It works, but it's not a permanent solution. At least that's what I feel.
So how does one go out of it?
In that case, as I said, just kind of engaging yourself in hearing or some kind of activity where you're like remembering, Krishna, because the whole point of we're doing our job, we're making money, we're doing all these things, but we're keeping Krishna in the center of it. What you realize is that at any given point in time, you're in some way or another remembering Krishna, not maybe always directly, but you're always remembering him. And that shift in consciousness really makes a difference. Or, you're engaging with friends who also have that similar mindset, talking about that. Or you have, a teacher who's able to explain a lot of these things. Because sometimes I feel overwhelmed when I'm reading a lot of these books. So having that teacher, that community, similar to, I guess, how we have here, really, and I guess that's why we all keep coming here, right? This can also be some kind of escapism mechanism, but this is more permanent. At least in my case, this is something that has helped really fuel me the past 2 years more than anything else that I've tried. I've tried movies, I've tried traveling, going out, whatever. At least to me, any sort of activity where it's beyond this kind of, temporary space, it just, just gives that energy.
But the focus of the discussion today was your identity. How does that revolve around your identity?
Because you are aware that, okay, I'm a student right now, but then tomorrow I may not be. And, you don't neglect that spiritual identity, really, is what I'm trying to say here. That you also, just as how we feed our material identity, as you said, through sleep, it's necessity. So similarly, we shouldn't forget that there's also need to kind of feed that spiritual identity.
I mean, like you said, you have to you hear about God, but how does that relate to the identity?
Because we remind ourselves that we're not permanent here. Everything is temporary. So again, that realization. The more we hear it, the more it kind of builds into our mind. Really fuels our identity. Like, yeah, I'm here. I'm doing this. I'm just kind of going through this, phase, but I'm not really here for what I think I'm here to do. Like, okay, I'm a student today, or getting this job, or whatever it may be. There's still something more to kind of go after, something that will give me more self-satisfaction. If maybe you want to add to that, or I'm missing something.
It might be worthwhile to go to your happily ever after slide. I absolutely love that connection.
I know.
But I don't know if maybe that part would be helpful for what you're driving at. Because here you talk about like when we can align ourselves with our spiritual identity, this is when we can really be happy.
You really feel different kinds of emotions when you feel, and those emotions help fuel all those material problems so that you can avoid living in that kind of fear, not necessarily avoid it, but at least minimize the impacts of that fear, anxiety, that sort of stuff. So that whatever roles that we have throughout our material life, we're able to go through that at this stage of our life where our role is to do this, or this stage of life, our dharma is to do that. But then you keep in mind that you're chasing after this. This is really what you want.
But it won't someone say like, if I'm feeling sad,
Mhm.
I'm just gaslighting myself into feeling happy.
How?
Like, I'm feeling sad right now, and I'm like, no, I identify as soul, and soul is happy, but soul I should be happy.
Okay, that's easier said than done. It won't work like that. Just saying it won't work. That's kind of where this comes in, or the community comes in. Really, you see the kind of community that you engage with. So if you look at a community where you're able to talk openly about these things, and in that community you're able to keep this in the center of it, then you're able to. That process will kind of help you feel better, if that makes sense. Rather than you just telling yourself, because it's easier said than done.
So how is that soul related to Krishna? I mean, you said it's qualitatively same, happy, but then you said hearing about Krishna, like will alleviate some of that.
Yeah, because we wanna be with him.
How does that work out? Like, what's the relationship?
Simple. We're trying to do things that make us happy, and at least from my perspective, what I've seen is whenever we hear about Krishna Leelas, we hear about Krishna playing with the cowherd boys, breaking the pot, stealing the butter, all these cool things. It's like you want to be there. At least for me, I imagine myself, in there with him, and that's kind of my consciousness. Usually when I'm chanting, just kind of imagining myself in that world rather than this world, because I know in that world we can experience these things. So it's really whatever aspect of spirituality brings you joy. It can be anything really, whatever pastime or whatever attracts you. There's some reason that we're all here today, right? We're not here because we have to. No one's kind of telling us, hey, gotta be here. I mean, that's free food, but that's also, so okay, you're eating food with Krishna, that's like, so, because at the end of the day, Krishna ate this first, and then it's kind of coming to us as prasadam, right? So why are we not attracted the same way to other food or other things in life? The same activities, playing with friends. What's so special about this? So that each of us have that individual relationship, which no one can really define except for ourselves. So if we focus on that and we fuel that, and we keep, that's what I mean by keeping Krishna in the center of our day-to-day life, not necessarily literally, but just knowing that there's something more that I can chase. There's somewhere I want to be, which is not in any of these places. And I'm keeping that as my drive. And how do we remind ourselves? Because we tend to forget about that. So we remind ourselves through the association that we keep, through the friends that we make, through the teachers that we have, through the things that we do.
So habits.
Maybe also just to add, it's not necessarily that if I am perfectly spiritually situated, I'm always like running around with a big smile on my face. Like there's lots of stories around very elevated personalities who experience great sadness or sorrow. But the question is, why am I feeling sad? What is that happiness or that sadness directed to? Or what's the source of it? Is it because of someone or something in my life that's part of that realm of transient? Or is it born out of that eternal kind of relationship and that sense of identity that doesn't change with this body?
That's a very nice answer.
Yeah. So, yeah, if everyone's good, then we can kind of, try this out and see if it works. Maybe it won't work today, but maybe tomorrow it might. That's the cool part of it. So is anyone missing a beat?